due. So then is full payment to finance with the municipality. With the municipality, the tuition fee 100 to or municipality due by payment. No response is received automatic. We then send out invoices to all of those land requesting the first payment of the term to be due by December of this year. So property will incur those finance with us the $100 fee by 25th. The first annual payment will be due by the end of the year.
The November 25th deadline. How soon prior to this letters received? And that because I get everything 7 to 8 days in your office. They get them out. Get my
That's why we've been a window and will be laid out through
Your Chairman, the lower and just keep revenue new minutes. Every get a
another reason
words trap.
On the
I've got a problem with this overdraft, as I will call it, of 40 to 60% on this billing. Personally, I bought this house not knowing that there was contaminations in the ditches. Lawyers searched the home, nothing, never was anything found, and there is so many homeowners like me that I have without which I find very unfair. Taxes, why wasn't there a reg for people like us? I don't understand. Number two, the way that is payments of 6,000 should be on every home. Some have B&B homes have double on them to their sale. And there is property out there, dual homes, single, they are accounted for. The little places that are on the home, but not on your list. Happen.
Anyone? Alan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to the question about addresses that you see but are not on this list, I think what you're referring to is the 911 numbers, the green signs, and it is true that some properties have multiple addresses on them. When you drive by, you'll see 2 or 3 numbers on them, but they are one property, so you'll only see one number. I think that an example in here is 632 and 634. It's real in our books. It's just 632, the property.
Do you want to answer the B&B?
Perhaps I could just talk about the model that we use to establish the ERUs. As a base model, we considered individual residential properties as the sort of the standard, and that's how we arrived at the equivalent residential units. So, if a property had it would receive residential property. It would receive 1 ERU and 1 connection, unless the property owners requested additional ERUs and additional connections. We looked at restaurants, hotels, the park, the recreational properties, but we did not look at the residents or the residential properties as home businesses or fees.
Thank you. Frank. Put your mic on. Thanks.
These residential properties, some of them actually have a resident as well as a cottage, as well as a business. It's very clear which ones are there and which ones ain't. Now, some of these properties that are listed residential should be commercial and should be double dwellings. I think you guys should really go down Point Peely Drive and reassess the drive, please, because look at a B&B, it'd be no worse than me taking my garage, turning it into a cottage and say, oh, well, everybody else is doing it. It is not fair. It is not right. These people get an income on this, and I hate to say it this way, I'm not pinpointing it, but if they can get away with it, let them get away with it. If they can't, oh well. Now, these businesses that are residential, okay, that have businesses, you should deal with people. And I do have addresses. I could leave everyone a list if you want, because I did go down the drive. Might be wrong on a few, but 90% of these are correct. And the 932 that you guys had mentioned earlier, actually, 934 is the main house, not 932.
Thank you, Frank. We did receive this also. So,
Mr. Chairman, just to speak to that, when we looked at classifying properties, certainly we looked at the uses that were happening, and those that were designated commercial properties and used for commercial purposes were allocated costs accordingly. On the residential side, we were certainly aware of different scenarios. Single residential lots with, say, 2 small cottages on a single residential lot. Much more difficult, to try and come up with a methodology that could be applied to all based on the different scenarios, and trying to, address these things and make it perfect based on estimated flows. So the equivalent residential unit model, if it was a single residential parcel, one legal parcel, it was charged 1 equivalent residential unit. even if, say, there were two small cottages on there, or a home and a cottage. And that was the consistent methodology we applied there. Some may say, well, that's not necessarily fair. What the equivalent residential unit is meant to do is capture the average residential homes from, flows from average residential homes. I mean, this, another inequity, imagine if we tried to determine how many bathrooms the homes have, and how many bedrooms, how many square footage. In this model that we felt was fair, that the OMB agreed was fair, we did not differentiate between a small two-bedroom cottage, 800-foot two-bedroom cottage on one residential unit, and charge them any more than a 3,000 square foot, five-bedroom, four-bathroom home beside it. They were each charged an equivalent residential unit based on one legal parcel, one residential parcel. And that was the consistent methodology that we applied. Different for commercial businesses because the peak capacity is certainly very different. That was based on area and peak seating capacity, different for commercial businesses. But for residential units, if it was one legal parcel, it was one ERU and one connection. We did have a number of circumstances where property owners requested that we add another connection and add another equivalent residential unit. And we believe that the likely intention, was that the owner was looking to sever that particular residential parcel into two. Now we're talking about two parcels, two equivalent residential units.
But those are covered into this.
Yes, if the request was made for it, they were assigned two ARUs and
Assessed,
two
okay.
connections. So
Thank
the
you.
only time we deviated from the one residential parcel, one residential unit, is if it was a request of the owner.
Okay, thanks. Frank?
Now, all these lots that are potential lots, I mean, I've got probably, for the heck of it, maybe 7 or 8 of them. If you take 7 or 8 vacant lots, I don't mean that the people that own the lots now, but further down the road, when they are developed, when these sewer are paid for, are we going to get compensated for that? Or is that money gone for us? Because now you're talking about your investments. How about ours?
So these are, Rob will take it, but these are all developable lands you're talking about or suggesting?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Rob?
Mr. Chairman, I think if there was a vacant lot that was not assigned, a vacant residential lot that was not assigned an ERU, we have deemed that to be an undevelopable lot based on IRCA regulation, the difficulty of building in floodplains and flood-prone areas. If by chance, sometime in the future, some residential lot owner was able to actually build a home on there, that would be a matter before the council of the day sometime in the future to determine whether or not they would have a buy-in fee. To the question, would the residents receive a refund? The answer would be no. If the municipality did collect, it would go to a sewer reserve to pay for all sewer costs in the system. And once again, that's very consistent on how we deal with all infrastructure, sewage and otherwise, that is built by development for the benefiting property owners. Consider the Woodsit development as an example. We didn't put a large sewer buy-in fee to the existing system and then hunt down the owners of the system who built the development 20 years ago and provide them some sort of refund. Again, if that situation plays out in the future, we don't expect it to, but if it does, it'll be a decision of the council of the day, and if there is a charge, it'll go to the infrastructure reserve to pay for the maintenance and replacement of all sewers.
Thank you.
As far as I understand, the way IRCA is, you have to follow the grade, the 100-year floodplain. If you accommodate that floodplain, you are allowed to build. If you're a developer, you should know that. Am I right or wrong?
Well, you're directing it to me now, so I'm going to try to see who you got to direct it here first, and then we'll try to pick somebody in the audience or somebody that can answer that question. Anybody want to take it, Rob? Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, again, we will simply say again, and we tried to take this very difficult assessment schedule and be as fair as we could to all of the landowners. It was not a simple task. A lot of effort was put into this. And the vacant parcels that were not assessed, there was a reason for that, and that was because, given the restrictions of the property, we did not feel that development could occur on those lots reasonably in the near future under current regulation. If we felt that development was a possibility, that vacant lot was assigned an equivalent residential unit. I know there are some really unique things that have been done on parcels to get around the current development restrictions. But again, those are unique and rare, and we didn't feel that it was appropriate to charge the vacant parcels that we felt were undevelopable an equivalent residential unit, because we did not feel that they would ever use that sewer capacity.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Murray?
As you guys are our eyes and our speeches, please, please do something to try to help people, because I am also on disability. I cannot afford to do what they ask us to do. Whether I go get a loan or not, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. That's what it is. So a person that is worse off than me, that has to sell his home, uproot, and leave all the memories behind because somebody made a mistake. We did not make a mistake. You guys did not make a mistake. Somewhere along the line, you guys got to take a look at this, please. That's all I ask.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Murray? Okay, thank you.
The next delegation request is from Paula Olette.
Okay, which one's Paula here? Are you going to be speaking at all, Mr.?
Hello, I've got Rob with me as well from Freddy's, if that's okay.
He wasn't a delegation, but if you want to speak together, I'd rather him speak separate after you, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you, and thank you for taking the time for us. First of all, I'd like to also say thank you for giving us sewers, cleaning up Point Peely Drive, cleaning our waters, and making our area beautiful as we're progressing through. I'm here because of the unfair billing system on businesses. It hasn't been touched upon yet this evening, but I'm pretty grateful I'm the one to be able to speak on that behalf. I do need, you did do a little bit of clarification, but I do need a little bit more on future development versus engineer's discretion. I need to know the difference between those two.
Okay, well, that's not going to come from me. Anybody want to take a stab at that one, Rob?
Mr. Chairman, I think the discussion is, or the question is around, for the commercial properties, how did we end up at the equivalent residential units for these commercial properties? If there was a current commercial use on the particular property, it was assigned ERUs based on the existing facility that was there and the existing use. If there was a vacant commercial property, we didn't have that luxury of determining ERUs based on what was there. We had to look at the developable land area and assigned ERUs based on the potential of that commercial property. And essentially, that's how it was applied consistently across all commercial properties.
Paula?
So future development and engineered development, what is the difference between the two? That still didn't get clarified, sorry.
Through
Go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Rob.
Chairman, I don't, where is engineered development coming from?
I don't know, you have it on your sheets in here as properties that were assigned as build for future engineer, and other properties that were broken down as engineered discretion. It's on the municipal papers.
Okay. Anybody?
Perhaps, so I mentioned undevelopable lands, and again, very difficult area in which to determine assessment because a lot of the areas are considered undevelopable. So it's no secret, it was in the OMB discussion. There's property owned by the Kraus. family, there was an objection on it, and it had to do with the land area. So what we had to do for certain properties, because it was a commercial land area, but it abutted a sensitive use or a sensitive land area like the Sturgeon Creek. So we looked at the parcel and determined you couldn't develop on that entire parcel. And so depending on the required setbacks and the elevation of the parcel, we had to determine a developable land area for a particular commercial property. So it wasn't based on the entire property, again, because that wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to assign sewer units based on capacity in an area where somebody couldn't develop. So some lots had to shrink in size, and we had to determine a developable area which was different than, say, the legal size of the parcel. Again, that is a matter that was specifically brought before the OMB. We made our submissions as to, the reasons. It wasn't arbitrary. We looked at IRCA development requirements and setback requirements, and essentially landed on, based on those requirements, a developable land area on vacant lands. And those vacant lands were then charged equivalent residential units based on the developable land area of the commercial property.
Okay. So for future development, that's a property that can have future growth on that property to develop further. Am I right in saying that?
If it's vacant.
Commercial?
Yes.
Vacant commercial?
Only if it's vacant.
Okay.
If there was a current building on the property that was being used, it was assessed based on the existing building and the existing use.
Okay. Thank you. So if this land mass was much greater than what the actual building on the commercial property is presently, would that land mass have any difference on how it was decided?
I guess Rob, size-wise?
No. We looked at the existing building and the existing use. If it was a commercial property being used, it was assigned based on the building there. If it was vacant, we had no choice but to look at potential future commercial use.
On
and
1
assign
acre, 10 acres, it
accordingly.
wouldn't matter.
Correct.
So as DJs, no matter what, if the next owners came in and tore it down, it would still be considered that was the landmark to start with. But if they grew on that property, because it has much greater property, would it not be evaluated on the landmass as well?
Well, that's, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it was not. Again, in determining these methodologies, it had to be fair and consistent. And, as you can appreciate, the what-if scenarios are infinite. And so we had to look at what was fair to the existing businesses that were in place and what was fair to the existing landowners who may or may not have development in mind for their particular commercial property. And the method that was applied consistently to all properties was if there was a building on place, it was assigned based on that commercial building and that use. And if there was not, it was based on the commercial land area, developable land area.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So when we talk about the ERU for a restaurant, we're talking about a 40-plus residents or 50 seating capacity. Am I correct?
Is that, okay, is that inside or outside or both?
No,
or-
no,
oh,
outside is not even inclusive.
Thank you for
whatsoever.
answering that.
Sorry.
That's okay. Rob?
Mr. Chairman, so specifically for restaurant facilities, which is a commercial use there, what was used was the seating capacity observed at the time that the assessment schedule was created. So went into the facility, looked at the number of seats. It's consistent approach. Certainly we recognize that there are businesses, if you compared capacity, we didn't pull everyone's liquor license and assign ERUs based on their maximum capacity of their liquor license. We looked at the number of seats, indoor seats. Some could argue, why didn't you look at outdoor seats? Outdoor seats leads to peak flow. We didn't do that. We looked at the building and we looked at the number of seats, observed seats in the restaurant. And based on those seats, then number of seats equals flow, and then your total flow divided by your equivalent residential units will then dictate how many equivalent residential units gets assigned to that commercial property.
Okay.
Very good. So, in that, property 617, they have a liquor license for 40 seating capacity that was granted to them in 2017. This is public knowledge. Their billing is an ERU for 2 for $30,991. My establishment at 857 Point Pelee Drive, ERU, as a comparison, is for 40 seating capacity, one resident, of $68,000. I need to know what the differences are there, first of all. For them to be charged for $30,000 and me $68,000.
Rob?
Mr. Chairman, again, we didn't use approved liquor license seating capacity. I don't know if that's 40 for your restaurant. I mean, again, it's public knowledge, so we could look up what that is. For Freddy's, we certainly know, it's higher than that as well. So again, it was observed seats, so roughly 40 seats is the equivalent of 3 residential units, where roughly 30 seats is the equivalent of 2 residential units. So at the time, the property that was brought up was observed to have approximately 30 seats. On the objector's property, it was observed to have approximately 40 indoor seats, and that's the difference in the ERUs. Additionally, the objector's property has a residential unit, so there's not only the commercial charge, but because there's a residential use there, there's a residential unit for essentially that apartment or that living quarters that is on that facility as well.
Absolutely, there is 40 seating capacity in my restaurant, as well as residential. And in property 617, there is a 40 seating capacity, as well as a retail store upstairs. Are we any different? And that's where the public washrooms are, is upstairs.
Okay.
So I need to know again, why the difference in price?
Fair question.
It's, again, are you saying that at that particular property, there is a residential unit or somebody living there? Through you, Mr. Chairman?
On my property of 857 or 617?
617.
There is commercial property upstairs, a retail store with public washrooms upstairs.
That particular property, again, the objector's property, we felt that based on the seats that were counted, that the equivalent residential unit was fair. And again, there's a residence on there, so that was that particular property. The other opened up partway through this particular project, so we did have to reassess it. And again, it was reassessed as a restaurant with 30 seats that were observed by the engineers on the project, and that's why it was assessed that way. We have to also remember that equivalent residential units are assigned in blocks, much like we're not assigning one home more than the other home because they have a single bathroom. You have to look at how much sewage is expected to be generated based on the number of seats in the restaurant. And so, my understanding is right now that particular property, 617, is used as a restaurant establishment on the main floor. I don't know if there is an open business happening on the second floor. I'm not really sure, but again, these assessment schedules are determined at a point in time. So, you did it based on counting seats, come reassess us and half the tables are gone, right? Or, someone adds a table in there, we're not going to revisit the particular property and say, oh, this particular restaurant added another table, and therefore, we have to see if the extra 5 seats tips them over another equivalent residential unit.
So at the time,
So specifically at the time, 40 seats was observed in the objector's restaurant, and approximately 30 seats were observed at the 617 property. One equates to 3 equivalent residential units, one equates to 2 residential units, then an additional equivalent residential unit, including an additional residential connection, was provided because this particular establishment has a residential use attached to it.
So does that mean we're reevaluating 617?
That's a decision for the committee at the end of this hearing process.
Beautiful. Let's hope that that's a decision we to be fair. We talked about how the exterior patio is not something that's being accounted for, and I get it. So now when we talk about 617, and when we go into 625, that's a double deck. And Allison, if you could put up that picture. Councilor, I'm sorry? Okay. So as you see, that property is 4.5 lots. We're not talking just a simple little bus with public porta-johns. There is huge capability for future growth for 4.5 properties. We're not kidding anybody here when we look at that and go, wow, there's a huge future growth here. So to classify it as a 20 unit, are we reevaluating this at some point to realize that there's a whole lot of potential here?
We could probably do it at the end also, if you want us to look at that.
Thank you. We have another conflict of addresses. I know we talked a little bit earlier about how a home might have one address and have 2 homes on it. I'm a little confused as to when a house is given a 911 address, that's one location. The secondary address is a secondary location, is it not? So when we talk about commercial property, when we talk about 636, there's a home on that property. And when we talk about 638, that's the nature store, Peely Wings. 638 isn't on your books anywhere. 636 is on your books as a commercial with 2 units for 30,000, 32,000, forgive me. So they're paying more than the double-decker bus across the street is. I'm pretty sure that the customer count on the double-decker bus is probably a little higher than Peely Wings. In the beginning, we talked about fairness being allocated and looked at fairly among businesses. I can tell you I'm not seeing fairness. I'm paying $68,000. That's not a small chunk of change. So in that, I'm asking that these businesses that I'm addressing today gets a second look. Because me, double charging me and Freddy's, because what, we've been there the longest, we have 40, 50 seating capacity, in comparison to a reality that these people have the same potential, if not the same lot size, or the capacity, or the ability, being charged half of what we're charged. I'm not complaining for the 68, and I'm not complaining for the sewers. My beef is that we're not being fair with all properties.
Now, I got a question. Did you say 638 was not on the books anywhere?
It's listed as that's their home. That's not the commercial property. And if it is, we're backwards. 638 is the Peely Wings.
Okay. I think Alan's he's doing some in here. If you wouldn't mind, some kind of clarification or...
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I understand it, 636 is the property, and 638 is an address also on that property.
All one roll number?
It's one roll number.
Okay.
Okay, so in that, they have a commercial piece of property that they generate revenue from, and now they have a home on that property as well. And we're talking not just a cottage, a home. Pay for a residential hookup for the home as well?
Alan?
So as I understand it, that property is being assessed 1 ERU for the home and 1 ERU for the business. So there's 2 ERUs and 2 connections associated with that 636 property.
So that's the 32,000 you're talking about.
Okay, so commercial means nothing. It's billed as residential.
How's it zoned? Is it zoned? I don't want to say home business.
Yes, in this case, based on the use, it was equivalent to 1 residential unit, the Peely Wings.
So we also know that there's been a mall in this at some point, and this is listed right in you guys' paperwork. So how can that be?
Are you aware of this, anybody? Rob,
Mr. Chairman, perhaps some clarification.
go ahead. I'll explain a little bit deeper detail.
Yep, it states right here on you guys' paperwork, Peely Wings Nature Store. Some recommendations, guidelines for a shopping center with 410-meter floor area.
Hey, is that an addition, or are they going to revamp it, or what?
I don't know.
Anybody? No?
I mean, it's a commercial use, Mr. Chairman, it's a commercial use property, so it's, sorry. Forgive me, perhaps I should let, I mean, we're going around different addresses. I don't know anything about a mall.
No,
So-
just, I guess apparently they're going to increase their floor space. So I don't think it's come to
Yeah.
planning. I mean, planning's not here tonight, so I don't,
I think there is a commercial use there, and my understanding, my schedule is quite small right now, but my understanding is they were assessed based on commercial use and then equivalent residential units on that commercial use. And the type of use, it wasn't a restaurant, so there wasn't people that would come there and sit and eat and use restaurants. And my understanding is that you rent paddle boards and kayaks and various things there. So, you have to deem it some sort of commercial use, and it's in front of me, it's likely the category in which it was deemed, so that you can compare a little retail type commercial space with other types of commercial space.
so you're not sure then this is still going on the same footprint?
No, I don't think that there's no room to develop property.
Okay,
The setbacks, the 100-year erosion rates.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, sensible.
I'm going by what's written in the municipal papers. And again, how can we get a residential home on a commercial land and only pay for 1?
Hang on to that thought. Important to have something.
I think what Ms. Olet may be referring to is a previous PowerPoint that was presented by Dillon Consulting. This process that referenced how the commercial properties, ERUs were assessed to commercial properties, and referenced using a shopping mall as an example. Perhaps that's where this information regarding the shopping mall is coming from. That information is likely presented to the Ontario Municipal Board and perhaps at a council meeting at some point.
Your paperwork, and it says non-residential properties, and then it states Paula's Fish Place, Freddy's, Birdie's Perch, not even a trading post on this list, by the way, which seems to be pretty non-existent in a lot of the laws that we've been dealing with, and Peely as Western. So, I don't know, it's right here that for Peely Wings, it's shopping with 410 meters floor area. I don't know.
Maybe, is that what it is right now? How big is the place?
It's not my property.
Just saying they have retail in there now, maybe that's like,
Again, we're right back. How can we have a residential on a commercial paying for one?
So looking to 6, our assessment scale, commercial, it has a unit and it's a shop, it has a store on it. I guess if Dylan used the word shopping center, it was maybe misused, store. But the ministry guidelines that we were hearing at the time of the hearing looked at developed and commercial land areas, but there was only 3 categories. It was a minimum commercial flow, which could be like store, and a which was like 5 per day. So it fit into one of those 3 categories. It wasn't a restaurant. So we took the area, multiplied it by a factor of 20 per day, and came up with one equivalent residential unit.
so is this commercial? Because, we have different, be a resident with sales? Yes, no, maybe?
It's commercial, but it has a residence on it.
As and I own two at 60. Yep, 40 plus seats and a residence. I have commercial as residential zone, and I get to pay. I'm just trying to on how this was all put, because if you look into, but if we're looking at 50 seating capacity, we all should be charged for the 50 capacity.
Mr. I just wanted to clarify, at the time of the assessment, the recommended factors for appeals were different than recommended factors for hotel. That's between one residential unit and a commercial one property that's a restaurant, one residential and one unit on property, but the commercial unit is a good store. That would be the difference between you.
And thank you. I agree. So I'll look at this, the close that is with seating capacity, what they're is equal we have. I'm backing down on that. I think we should be real with.
At the time, 30 seats, use the liquor. So we'll just.
The liquor was in 270 issue. Okay. Okay. So we'll move zone. We have, and we also have a cottage. That ad is I don't have it in front of me. 618. They have a cottage that is a completely separate building. They have a permanent home, and they also conduct business out of that, which, I mean, it's a separate company to begin with.
Got him.
Yeah. Just gonna try and find it on my list.
2. Thank you. So come at it.
2 AR.
house, a cottage, and a business.
30,
618, but they're paying 32 for,
their business from. Of the rent. They don't live in it. To generate revenue from with this, but I'm just to say that the fair.
Mr. That the certified by the municipal here, the methodology of the Ontario Municipal Board on dissect property down here, fixing a single residential lot. It was a single equivalent residential unit, and one connection charge. If someone is conducting commercial activity, there's no business normal. So that's how the property was.
okay.
No.
Okay. No comment? On the 6-8, okay. Councilor,
Remember, it's about sewer.
Elijah ice cream. He's got $606. Now he can defend himself, but I'm just bringing this to you as another prime example. If you see 2 cars there in a week, you're lucky. But he gets to pay $49,000, and we're being fair. It's sewer flow. That doesn't balance. I'm sorry, but I'm not here to defend everybody's honor. I'm just here to prove to you that when it comes to Point Pelee Drive, for the commercial properties, there is nothing fair here at all. It needs to properly be looked at and evaluated. And finally, on Bevel Line, every property on Bevel Line is zoned commercial. There isn't a residential zoned commercial at $16,000. So does that mean once we get these sewers and we've resolved all of our little issues, that they can turn around and put a commercial piece of land on there and generate sales?
food for thought. Councilor Hammond, sorry.
Deputy Mayor, Paula, you built, I think, some good arguments with respect to 617 and 625. But you become less factual when you start talking about Point Pelee Drive. To tell you the length of the work that's gone into this, if you look at the assessment for the go-kart track, and it's well in excess of $1 million. And what do you see right now, say, go-kart track? Property assessment?
Did.
And it's vacant. Say that these commercial properties and then haven't been assessed. Credit due people expecting I
All the concerns that I had addressed to the council were brought up by previous, so I said earlier, I'm going to up concerns that were made. So the thing that I would like is of course, Point Peely National Park is the biggest driving factor in South Essex County. It is the biggest tourism dollars that is brought to this community and surrounding area. It's my thought on this is that it's the gateway to the furthest south mainland Canada. As grateful as I am for the work that was done on Point Peely and Level Line Drive for the sewer connections, which is way overdue, and thank that we have it now. It sure would be nice that 35,000 visitors, which by the way, I know you're aware of, but the audience is not, was the biggest tourist in all of Canada for the year 2017 for all federal parks. Point Peely generated 535,000 visitors. And these visitors delight to see and hopefully spend some of their in the town of Leamington. My point being is, it sure would be nice if Point Peely Drive had an appeal to it, based on the value of our assessments of ERU of 16,000 plus. It's like there's a lot of patchwork done along the road. As a tourist coming from Vancouver or beyond, you would not have known that this is the only road leading to the furthest south mainland Canada. I am very much aware that the Valley of Leamington doesn't have sole ownership of the road, and that road is shared responsibility with the county. Given the fact that we did put $11 million into the road for connections and sewers, it would have been nice to see the road with more appeal, whether it's curb appeal, no patchworks, and just a beautification of what this town means to 535,000 visitors, which, by the way, is going to steadily increase thanks to our funding from the federal government, who has now incurred another, $20 million to Point Peely National Park to do more service work. So it just generates to me that as the federal government is putting more money into the furthest park in Canada, which is also, by the way, the second smallest park in Canada, and they're putting that much money into it, and it sits in our own backyard, it should be a nice place to showcase how beautiful this town is. And I am extremely proud of this town and where we're going, where we've been, and where we are today. And finally, there is a 2% growth annually in Point Peely National Park. And that was my final statement, which I had wanted to incur prior to all the other comments that were made. Again, I thank you for your time, and we do appreciate you allowing us to speak on behalf of all residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next objection is from Francis and Barb Garrett.
I thought you called them already.
Everything's been answered for me, so I don't want to hold you up. I do have one question, though. My address is not even on here. And
Why are you here then?
I don't know. I guess I don't have to pay. But my name is here. So we've been dealing with this for 2 years, between IRCA and coming in here and speaking to the engineers and bringing out maps. and they assured me it was going to be changed, and I see this, and it's still not. So they have us down here as 637 Point Pelee Drive. We are at 642. I'm sorry, 641.
641.
And it's not on here. So I would just like to get that clarified.
Are you still getting your bills?
We are getting our bills, but
Okay,
I'd still like to get-
that'll be taken care of.
okay, and everything else, like the flooding, we had big-time flooding on our property from when they were doing the sewers in front of our house, and nothing was done about it, and that occurred quite an expense to us to fix that. And the other one was the vacant land. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There are no further objections or delegation requests that have been received prior to October 1st, 2019. Just to refer to the municipality's proposed revisions, that proposed revision was contained within the council report in connection with 932 Point Pelee Drive. So that will be before the committee for its consideration. And just to reiterate that the assessed owner has consented to that revision.
Thank you all for the delegations and the letters, but if there's anybody else, a person in attendance that did not file an objection but wishes to object to the special charge for any reason other than that you've heard already stated, please come forward, give a brief explanation, who you are, your address, and the committee will hear you, but we'll have to go through the motion to let you talk. Is there anybody else out there yet that hasn't spoken would like to speak? I guess we'll start with your name, and then we'll have a motion to accept you as a delegation.
I'm Kathleen Lesbrance. I was going to come in, this is really loud.
Okay, no, it's okay, but I had you marked off as not here before, so thank you.
There's a charge for connecting from the main sewer that was assessed to all of us. What it is it is a connection from the main that goes towards the house or whatever's going to be hooked up. We hooked up to that. I purchased pipe from Underground Specialties for $33 for 10 feet. I'm in the narrows, so it's very, very squished between the road and the lake. So there really wasn't a lot of space for them to go from the middle of the road to the house, maybe 30 feet. So we were charged $2,000 for that little bit of PVC from the main towards the house or commercial. It's just a lot of money. So I see everyone's charged for it. Now, I paid for my permit. When I paid for my permit to hook up myself, I was asked at that time to give a quote on how much I would pay for hookup. So what I believe that if I hooked up myself, there was not going to be a charge at all because I was hooking up myself. But really what I signed when I got my permit, they asked me what I thought I would be willing to pay to hook up to the sewer. So automatically I thought that they were asking me how much I was going to pay to hook up to the sewer, which I'm hooking up to the sewer myself, but they were asking me, I don't understand how they came to $2,000 for such a small little area, and everyone's charged it.
I think everybody's charged it. You answered that, but does anybody else have a comment? Your address was, don't have your address.
952.
Thank you.
I'm in the Narrows. I'm like,
Okay. Alan or Rob? Anybody? Rob? Guys are passing the buck. Alan?
Yes, that's related to our standard our standard charge for a sewer connection, and that's the number that's been used in all of the assessment schedules and was presented to the board. Okay. So the I guess column B would be your assessment against the property for the construction of the mainline sewer, and then we have a separate charge for the smaller diameter pipe that connects from the mainline sewer to the property line.
I guess everybody got the same bill.
it's such a short distance from the center of the road to all residents, businesses along Point Peely Drive, the Narrows. We're all on top of each other, and the road's right there. So being an underground special lease charging us $33 and some change for a 10-foot PVC pipe, and probably $35 for a connector, and then a cap, maybe 25. I probably have maybe 40 feet from the center of the road where they put the line to the cottage. I just think that $2,000 is very exaggerated.
Okay, Councillor Hammond? Thank you.
Chair, thank you. And Kathleen, I'm not sure, are you referring to what you were charged by a contractor to hook up your sewer system? Is that what you're referring to in the $2,000?
No, I hooked up myself. I hired someone. I got a permit from, and at the time when I got the permit, I was asked to give an estimate of what I thought it would cost to hook up. What I was assuming that meant is how much I would pay to hook up to the sewer itself, which I thought I was doing, which I did, but actually what it meant was how much they put in a line from the main going towards my house. A smaller line, they did it to everyone. They charged everyone $2,000. When you take into consideration how much this product cost, PVC piping, the connectors, caps, that they installed from the main to the residents, it's very exaggerated. That's all I can say. I mean, I have to look at it as what it is. I know how much PVC pipe costs and connectors and caps, and I just don't see how they got $2,000 for, and every single person is paying it.
I believe that the OMB probably had something to do with that also. Rob?
Mr. Chairman, like Ellen said, $2,000 is the number we use per connection, and that is not just the pipe, obviously. Depending on the nature of the project, sometimes material is only a small part of the total cost of doing that work. So you're talking about connecting into the mainline sewer and that work, bringing the connection towards the property and that work. And again, on average, we have a $2,000 connection charge. The costs of the project are the cost of the project. The reason that we have connection charges separate and apart from, in some local improvements on a per frontage basis, or in this particular local on an ERU, is that some properties request more than a single connection. And it is a way for us to take that $11.1 million total cost, add additional costs for those properties that may want an additional connection. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be fair. People could ask for multiple connections, and there would be no cost consequence to doing that. So given the average costs that we incur in doing these sewer projects, that's why we carry $2,000 for the typical residential connection, which includes everything: excavation, installation of the pipe, backfilling, all the work that's necessary for that service connection.
And I believe maybe when they asked you about the, I'm not going to say this for sure, but maybe somebody can help me on staff, if they asked you how much you think the connection is going to, that was for the permit, not basically for the installing, so. Okay.
It just odd that it was billed separately too. It wasn't included in the sewer installation. It was a separate application where, and it was charged, so it looked odd when I saw it, and maybe it was just put together incorrectly, so it looked more obviously wrong when I looked at it, but I'm happy to have sewers, and everything seems to be working fine so far. I do believe that we are charged more than what we should be, but there's really, we'll just see how this all pans out. And as far as our loans go for paying for this, what I'm understanding is if you're not going to pay in full by the end of November, you have to have, if you're getting a loan, you have to have it paid off through any means that you're going to get the loan at that time, or else you're going to be charged through the
We're
you sir, within a short time of the it's been since the sewers have got.
Is there any issues in how they call the engineering to the project manager?
We have engineer, project manager sitting beside the consultant, so they just give them, call in your, and they will look at it.
No problem. And which I love, 52 is my address line. It went, I said, signs on my signs on I like to look at the picture.
They know about it.
Now, it's just the way that it,
They've noted it, so again, so, okay,
yeah,
thank
all right. Thank you.
Anybody else that's still before the committee? Thank you. Now the committee will go from to the special charge.
October 1st, 2018. Is Mr. in attendance? Mr. Bender, there will be no matter to be in connection with that delegation request. All of the third is the portion of the is to will assist the committee I can in this regard. That committee consider first this power provision, which was contained in the report, which a connection to the particular vision with slightly assessments and has been consented to in writing by the governor. What those revision?
Have Councillor Hammond and Secretary Thiessen. All those in favor? Or sorry, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried.
I did want to just point to one issue that I had spoken to earlier regarding the committee's ability to alter assessments, and that is the purpose of this hearing. We did hear a lot of objections related to the interest rate. The committee does not have the authority under the regulation to adjust the interest rate, as the interest rate is reflected in the bylaw that is on the council agenda to be passed at the end of the meeting. The committee, however, if the committee sees fit, make a recommendation to council regarding the interest, and then when council reconvenes following the hearing committee, council could take the opportunity to consider the committee's recommendation. If the council does consider the committee's recommendation and does pass a motion to amend the term or the interest rate, which was currently reflected in the assessment schedule, that would therefore be reflected in the bylaw to be passed at the end of the council meeting. Regarding the balance objections, the committee should take this opportunity to consider each of the objections that was presented and then make a determination as to whether it wishes to dismiss the objections or alter any assessment in connection with any specific. Again, just a reminder that the committee does not have the authority to change the municipality's share cost of this project, but for any assessments that are adjusted based on those that were set in the report, reasons A to H.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I guess the first one that came up that I wrote down was if you want to discuss or you want to make a motion on interest rate, we have it from financial that we can change that. So is there any question? Get it on the floor first and then have discussions, or what's your wish? Going from the 6% to the 4.23. We'll do that one first. Councillor Thiessen, seconder. Councillor Jacobs, questions? Yes, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 4.23 only relates to the 10-year option. the 15-year option, we should also consider.
Well, I want to get this one down first, because
Okay.
if we do this for 10 years, then we know that the 15-year rate is different.
I just wanted to
Okay.
let you know that the
Councillor
15.
Thiessen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Laura, if I may. That 4.23, is that a solid rate for the next 45 days, or is there a chance that it changes as the bank rate changes?
Through you, that is the rate at which the landowners will pay.
Okay, it's been moved in other discussion. Seeing none in favor, opposed, thank you. Want to talk then about the 15 years, Councillor Hammond?
Deputy Mayor, yes. I think that, based on a lot of the information that we've been given tonight, and understanding the hardships of some of the folks that are down there, and, the extreme amounts that are going to have to be paid. And we've talked about this at length over the last year, trying to do something to offset some of these costs. So I'd like to make a motion that we consider an option of 15 years, and that would come in at 4.39.
Need a seconder for that? Councillor Wilkinson, questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This extended period of years as opposed to 10 may be acceptable, but unacceptable to others. If we go to 15, does that put everybody for 15, or the 10 years puts everybody on the line for 10? Is there a, so that some can apply for one and apply for the other? In case, what is most acceptable to those individuals?
I guess right now we're discussing that. We're moving it, but we're also moving all this forward to council, so council has to make that decision then, so.
I guess I'm a little confused then.
Okay, you want to explain anything, Laura, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, providing two options to the landowners in this situation is an option for council to consider. It would be my preference to only do one, but certainly we can debate that if that is council's wish. This committee is going, as I understand it, would be recommending to council to modify the current bylaw as it's written to reflect either the two options or a single option with a single term.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's why I wanted that clear as to how we're going to on acceptance of 15. Thank you.
Thiessen? Okay, Councillor Wilk.
Thank you. And I was hoping we'd have to is, yes, a 10-year, 15-year option, and then a lump payout if you want. So I just want to make sure that that's...
Now there's a lump payout, so if you're for years, and you sell your house after 10...
No, when I say if you want to come in, pay it. Yes.
Okay.
So you really got three options.
Okay, perfect, yes.
Sure.
I just want, for the people who want to maybe sell in the future, then it's another 5 years. Okay. That, or was that moved yet? No, it wasn't moved. This is for 15 years. What rate was it again? 0.3. Councillor Jacobs has, yes, Councillor Hammond second. Any further questions? All in favor? And carried. Do you want to take some information back to council about some of the assessments that were brought to our attention?
Mr. Chair, the matter that would be referred to council, the interest rate and the term, this committee will be deciding on any reductions or increases to any charges on each individual. So it would be the decision of the committee at this time, and no further decision would be required of council regarding the actual special charges related to each property.
So we're just talking about the interest rate and the amortization period? Okay. Is there any further motions then that... Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you. Like some of the comments that were made to us this evening, are they open for discussion, or can we ask questions on those? Is that within our...
On certain... Is that what you're trying to get at?
Mm-hmm.
I'll refer to legal, well...
As all of the objectors have had their opportunity to state their objections to the committee, if there's any further questions relating to of the debate at this committee table, those questions can be referred to administration to answer.
Councilor Jacobs?
If I may, Mr. Chair, the questions I do have is I guess, it's comment in respect to a fair and equitable evaluation of some of the residents that were brought forward. And are we have the ability to reassess those, or are they already fixed, or is that within our mandate to request?
Well, if they get reassessed, then the burden is the municipality, and it comes back to the taxpayer. Am I right or wrong?
I realize, I mean, even if they're reassessed, it's going to be a small amount of money, but I think in the assessment process, that if it's factual, what was brought forward to us to be factual, that I'm just saying that to make it a fair and equitable process. And again, as I think the amounts would be very minute. That would be, if there was any change at all.
But we just want fairness too, right? So, Ms. Orr, do you have anything else to add?
If the committee determines that there should be a reduction to a special charge that has been assessed against a property, that reduction would be allocated to the municipality. The municipality would pay for that, would pay that cost. If there is an increase, so for example, if the committee determined that a particular property should have been assessed at more residential units, then they're required adjournment of this hearing to provide notice to that property, who would then have the opportunity to make submissions to the committee at an adjourned meeting. Just keep in mind that interest are payable by the municipality on the funds that have been paid by the municipality. So those interest costs are being assumed by general taxation currently. If there is any adjournment, then those interest costs continue to be payable. So I hope that assists to answer your question regarding how those amendments to the assessment schedule would be borne.
So in other words, if we request a reassessment of certain properties, the interest rates are going to, it's like our national debt, it just keeps going up every, so that's where we're.
But then also, these people also have a chance to come in and appeal it too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So
it's.
we'll just delay it. Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? Councilor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, in the position that Councillor Jacobs was taking, I thought too that we would have to take a look at individual property. But what is the downside to that is the timeliness of it, because at the very earliest time, we wouldn't meet again for another 2 weeks, whereby, you know, we've already note here that some of our residents who live in Michigan aren't going to be notices on, as well as many other things.
Well, I don't think it would be 2 weeks, because then the people that need to be notified would take longer for them to get through. Notice.
So minimum of 2 weeks. So it puts us in a real awkward position, because if we believe some of the things that are being said, and I do, position where now what do we do? Because interest rates keep going up. We noted the fact that, you know, that we've got about 4 years in order to try to lock this, and it puts us in a difficult position as a committee to try and do. I think the only thing that it comes to mind for me is the fact that even if we assessed another property at one more EIU than what they are now, it's still only going to make a difference to the property owners there of like less than $100. Am I correct in assuming that roughly amount? Pardon?
1 1/4, 150?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we calculate about a 1 ERU reduction would be about $40 reduction for ERUs.
So we're left in a position where I don't think we have a position.
Councillor Thiessen?
I think I agree with Councillor Hammond. I think we're at a point discussion that we need to make it in this tonight. I don't think anything is going to help anything. I think our like Mr. Sharon had said earlier, they took a point in time and they did their assessment the best they could based on that point in time. Have things changed since then? Yeah, probably. But maybe the house beside you, a family of 12 moves in, and maybe on the other side it's a house of 1. Is that fair? Yes, yes, it is, because you never know who's going to move into that house. Is it fair that that one restaurant pays more than the other? If they're basing it on the number of seats that day, that's all you can do. Otherwise, we could be going around this thing every day. Liquor license probably would have assessed, would be my guess. So I think at this point, and I feel for every. I think the biggest problem was that there was a $10,800 put out, and that's what everybody expected. Unfortunately, things went off the rails. That happens sometimes. Unfortunately, the rails by 3 years. That's unfortunate. I feel for you. I understand fixed income. I know that that's a problem. I'm glad that Laura was able to come in tonight with a reduction in the interest rate at least. There's options on that side too, and everybody can. And I do encourage everybody to please go to your own financial institution and see if you can get a better rate. If you can get a better rate, that's great. But I think tonight, we're at a point we just got to make this decision and move forward, because we could go saying we might come back in a month from now and things have changed again. So we picked a point in time. I think we have to live with it.
I guess then our next step before we go back to council would be that we need a motion to dismiss the objections to move forward. Hang on a second, hang on. Councillor Wilkinson, we're getting that there. Councillor Wilkinson?
I think the word dismiss is a poor word. Wouldn't it be more like receive? Like we've received all the evidence. Saying to dismiss it is, I think, a poor choice of words for us to use here. I look at it more as comments were received and noted, and we're going to go about the decision. I'm just questioning the wording.
I still think with the rules we have here in Municipal Act, we have to use the word to dismiss. So. Okay, we have Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? Carried. We'll need now a motion to adjourn the Court of Revision. Councillor Thiessen, second by Councillor Jacobs. All in favor? Carried. Mayor McDonald, it's yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know that wasn't an easy job. So now we need to consider the resolution regarding the cost, the interest, and the frames.
Yes, Ma'am. At the Committee of Revision, there was a motion passed to make a recommendation to council that council consider increasing with the Peely Bevel Sanitary Sewer Project, that the bylaw contain a interest 4.23% payable if the payment is made over 10 years, or an interest rate of 4.39% if the payment is made over 15 years, and that either option be provided to the property owners. So council can consider that and pass that resolution, and if passes that resolution at time, bylaw to be presented at the end of this council meeting would contain whatever provisions are contained within that motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Orton. So we need a motion again for that?
Yes, to be passed by council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll make the motion. Wait for a seconder with a comment, please.
So moved by Councillor Jacobs, by Councillor, and you'd like to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to be clear, the residents will have an option of 10 or 15-year period with this recommendation?
With this motion?
Yes.
Ms. Roach?
Through you, Mayor McDonald, yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor?
I'm sorry, I don't know what we're voting on, so I'll abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, well, we'd like to include this resolution regarding the cost and the interest, as well as the time, the options. Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to reports of staff and delegation, we will start with the report regarding Sarah's Drain, the new culvert for parcel 580-00603. And before we do that, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, Gaspar, Allen, as well as Rob Malaconi, for your assistance in this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, we've been
Yes.
sitting here for 3.5 hours. Can we take like a 5-minute break before we get into any more of this?
Do that, do we need a motion? Yes, we need a motion, and Councillor Jacobs?
Yes, please.
Second, Deputy Mayor, all in favor, please hit organic break.
So, before everybody leaves there too, I know Gasper left, no, he's still there. I appreciate all your input, the administration. I know you're going to be bringing it up tonight underneath the council. I appreciate everything you did, the input, and get what we wanted. Well, we got what we wanted, but I mean, it just, I don't want to say wanted, but thanks for your professionalism and stuff too. It wasn't that bad, so sorry I didn't hear much from you, Rob.
I think we have about 30 seconds left.
Right, this drain is a public meeting, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Oh, sorry. Councillors, we're ready to go. Well, it's 9:30. Okay, Luann, we're ready to start. So it's the report, actually the public meeting regarding the Saris Drain, the new culvert for the parcel 580-00603.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Tonight, we're asking council to adopt the report prepared by Baird AE, dated September 6, 2019, for a new culvert over the Saris Drain for a newly severed parcel of land. It's residential land. He's dividing it into, he's doing a lot line adjustment for the one parcel and then severing off the lot for a new residential. So he requires an access for the new proposed house. So the project is included in the 2019 budget. However, the assessment is 100% to the land. We will cost money equivalent to what the tender comes in at the time of tendering when we're ready. And there is no municipal cost. Part of the report, you will see that we have some items for brushing. However, the landowner informed us that he had he did have the end tendered out that the contract came in with the best.
Now, question.
It's more of a comment that I'm glad with come in for.
Thanks, Alan.
In 2019, council approved an agreement with the province of Ontario, $18,903 in funding under the Municipal Community Program, or OMCC, to an additional municipal share of 20% of eligible project costs. OMCC was intended to provide annual funding to Ontario municipalities to support the implementation of commuter cycling infrastructure. OMCC was a multi-year program to be supported by the proceeds from Ontario's cap and trade program. All Ontario municipalities were eligible for annual OMCC funding, up to 80% of costs associated with the implementation of eligible commuter cycling projects. The program has since been canceled. However, all the funds that were allocated prior to the cancellation of the cap and trade program on July the 3rd, 2018 are still available and must be spent prior to December 30, 2020. Leamington has received the agreed upon amount of $117,933. The municipality of Leamington submitted an application to the OMCC program with a list of commuter cycling capital projects. The list was extensive as the program was anticipated as a multi-year investment with a one-time approval process. So we have a long list to choose from. Administration is recommending, after consideration of eligible projects, to upgrade video detection at 5 intersections, as they'll replace existing detection provided by loops buried under the asphalt that only detect vehicles. The loops are also proving to be unreliable. This will address a number of traffic operational complaints that we have on file regarding delays and inconsistent side street signal activations. Motorcycles are regularly undetected and must wait for larger vehicles to approach intersections before the lights change. All the intersections noted in this report, the 5 that we're recommending, the 5 that are noted below in this report, are designated on our active transportation plan. The new system will be able to detect vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. So we were recommending, or we tendered for 5 intersections: Talbot Street East at Victoria, Erie Street North at Wilkinson, Erie Street at Oak Street, Erie South at Pulford, and Oak Street West at Shirk Street. Improving the accessibility of these for is increasing the number of users who will feel safer using these intersections on their bicycles. The video detection system that administration is recommending is called GridSmart and is 100% compatible with all traffic types entering the intersection. It's also compatible with our existing control systems. It will track truck, car, bus, motorcycle, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic. And the system uses all these counts within itself to better manage the intersections. So 2 tenders were received, one from Ron Field & Son and one from the Get-Go. Ron Field was the low bidder for the project, and Ron has done work in the municipality in the recent past. But given the approved budget, which is laid out in Table 2 of the report, but given the approved budget of $168,000, compared to the low tender price of just over $134,000, administration is recommending that one additional signalized intersection be added to the contract. The municipality would have to return, if we didn't do this, the municipality would have to return just over $10,000 in funding if the project scope is not extended to include this additional intersection. So we laid out the project cost, the budget and the project cost in Table 2. Our budget for this year was $168,000, and you can see that had approximately $118,000 from the OMCC program and an additional $50,000 in taxation or net from revenue dollars. So if we add the 6th intersection in, our total project cost would be just over $159,000, and it would fully expend the amount of money we got through the OMCC program. So again, we are recommending that we award this project to Ron Field & Son and that we add the additional intersection of Erie Street at the TD Bank.
Thank you, Alan. Council, questions, comments? Motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, worthy Mayor. So Alan, does this mean now when I'm at the TD Bank, I can make the light at Pulford or no? Because it's impossible to do right now. And if they're synchronized, I just wonder if this is going to be done.
I don't have an answer for that. I know that we can look at it and see if we can adjust the signal timings at all. But this system itself will just manage the traffic. And
With the addition, right, of the extra signal. Okay, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Alan, now we're moving on to the parking lot, the winter maintenance contract. Ken. Sorry, Ken. It's been a long night and I was just an observer. Ken.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. So this report is on the results of tenders received for a parking lot maintenance contract at various municipal properties and to request Council authorization to award the contract to the lowest bidder. So historically, the recreation complex has contracted out their winter maintenance of their parking lot, portions of their sidewalk and entrances, with the continual addition of roads and sidewalks within the municipality as a result of new development, sidewalk expansion programs, and the active transportation initiatives. Winter control demands are increasing with them. So in an effort to maintain service levels and to always comply with the minimum maintenance standards, for this tender, administration has added the remaining municipal parking lots to the scope of the 3-year contract. So 3 tenders were received, with Landscape Effects being the lowest bid. Landscape Effects had the previous 3-year contract and completed the work to the satisfaction of the municipality. So the recommendation is that the parking lot winter maintenance contract in the amount of $113,100 plus HST for the 2019-2020 season be awarded to Landscape Effects. That years 2 and 3 of the contract reflect an annual price increase of 2.5%, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Do we have questions, comments? Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. Ken, a two-part question, if I may. I'm sure you've done the math. How does this compare to if we were able to do that in-house, meaning no doubt an extra person hired, maybe more equipment to be used? How do these costs compare to that? Question number one. And is this contract based on whether it snows or it doesn't snow, and do they look at years past history to determine that?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, as far as the keeping it in-house versus contracting it out, it's been difficult for our staff in-house because our priorities are with the roads and the sidewalks. So typically when to get to a parking lot, have them clean prior to public and businesses showing up, is proving to be difficult. And as we continue to grow, sometimes we may not get to the parking lot till later in the morning, and then it's half filled with cars and stuff like that. So it's difficult to put a final cost to our guys doing it, because the way they do it is they'll be doing the road clearing. Then we'll either designate some staff to go around and do parking lots while they're doing roads as well. So they're kind of in and out of parking lots, depending on what their specific task is. If it's during the day, we may be able to have a designated staff or a few guys doing different parking lots and stuff like that. So the level of service would improve than what we're currently doing now. So it's difficult to do like a hard cost comparison between the two, because right now we're not able to keep up with that level of service. When we look at the rates that were being charged, we did compare them. We've compared them to other locations. They seem to be very reasonable, and sometimes even more than reasonable when they compare. When you look at a contract who might charge $100 more with no salt included, that would equate to like six hours in a parking lot over an entire month. And usually they can send in up to 6 operators going into each parking lot. That would be very difficult for us to do right now. So that's some of the benefits of contracting it out, where they have a fleet and a group of people that when it snows, they can just dispatch all of them and they can get the job done rather quickly. Whereas Public Works, we have operators who are very skilled, DZ licenses, they can handle the big equipment, out in the rural, the tandems and stuff, and also on the roadway, which is very difficult because you're working in live traffic. So they can focus on their priorities with the roads and the sidewalks, which is where the majority of our claims do come from. As far as your second question, yeah, this is basically a lump sum rate for the year. It's not by the hour per time cleaning or anything like that. It's just a rate, which for average, there's different ways you can do it. It seems to be fairly competitive. Again, we looked at other locations that are, with contractors and stuff like that, and it seems very competitive. Yeah, and it's some years you might win, some years you might lose, but on a 3-year contract, we feel it averages out. It's a lot easier to budget this way. It's beneficial for the municipality because we know what to budget. Some contractors also like it because they know no matter what they're what they're going to be able to make that year, so then they can commit the resources appropriately for that.
And that's great. And Ken, I appreciate your answer, because anytime you contract out anything, whether it be garbage or anything else, you need to have some kind of a justification, and you certainly laid that out. Also, too, I know you're limited on space out there where you currently are with respect to being able to store equipment inside and all of those things. So I thank you for your answer.
Anyone else? Moved by, oh, hang on, can you just wait for a minute? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question, Ken. Is there a minimum when they go in? Like, if you get a dusting of snow, they're going to salt, or they have to wait to get 1 inch? Or, like, do you have something specified as to a minimum?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we do. There's a spec put together, so, and it's very similar to the road spec, or what our kind of our own internal scope is. So basically, up to 2 they have to maintain less than 2 inches of snow in the parking lot. So basically, if you get accumulation of 2 inches, then they have to go in and clear that down. There's also a condition of no ice. So it's very similar to our roads. Even if you get a dusting and then cars start driving on it, you start to develop icy spots. So it's basically, like you've probably seen at the complex over the years, it's the same group doing it. It's advantageous to treat the parking lot as soon as you start getting any types of accumulation, because as soon as that gets packed down, turns to ice, it becomes more difficult to deal with. So, but yes, there is a spec with a minimum requirement.
Oh, I think that's great, because it's almost a 24-hour operation there. So that's good news. Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So if there are no further questions, moved by Councillor Geeson, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our solicitor for the, Ken, if you don't mind.
Yes, as council is aware, there is a curfew on council meetings, which is contained in the procedure bylaw, that no item of business may be dealt with at a council or committee meeting past 10 p.m. unless all members present consent to an extension. When administration was putting this agenda together, we were very aware that it was going to be a long meeting. And we looked at all of the reports that were being presented and determined all of them were very important to be presented at tonight's meeting for the purpose of awarding contracts, so that those contracts are in place so that some work can get done prior to the colder weather before the end of the year. So I'm just making those comments for council to consider when it considers whether or not there should be an extension past 10 p.m. So I'll just leave that for your consideration.
Thank you, Ruth. Council, can you stay up past your bedtime?
It's about my bedtime right now, so I'll leave it.
Moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. So we're continuing, Ken. So it is you with the Hyatt and William Simpson Park renewal.
Thank you. Okay, so in the 2019 parks budget, we had 70,000 was approved for the renewal of Hyatt Park and 75,000 for William Simpson Park. An RFP was issued for the supply and installation of new playground equipment for each park with a specified maximum budget. So we received 3 proposals from Play Power, Henderson, and New World Park Solutions. Administration reviewed and scored each proposal on their budget, how much of the money went into the equipment versus installation, delivery time, which proposal offered the most variety of equipment for different age groups, etc. At the conclusion of this review, administration chose Play Power for Hyatt and New World Solutions for William Simpson. In the report, there's a kind of a 3D rendering of what would be included. Letters were sent out to the residents with the proposed play equipment that you can see in the report. So we received three responses for Hyatt Park and 4 for William Simpson. All the responses were very positive. The residents are very excited to see this coming in. We did get a couple suggestions or just requests, if possible, a basketball net at Hyatt Park and a swing set for William Simpson. So we reviewed these requests and the budgets, and we feel we can fit both those into the scope of the project. So after the purchase equipment, both projects will have around $14,000 remaining in the budget, which will be used for site prep, base material, and then the swings and the basketball nets, benches and trees. And barring any unforeseen delays, kind of like Ruth was saying, is expected that the works will be complete this year. Thank you. I guess I need to review the recommendation. So the recommendation is that we purchase the play structure for Hyatt Park in the amount of $54,829 plus HSD from Play Power. The play structure for William Simpson Park in the amount of $59,864 plus HSD from New World Park Solutions, and that the manager of Public Works be authorized to execute both purchase agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Sounds great for those 2 parks. Comments? Questions? Motion? Comment? Councillor Dunn.
To you, Madam Mayor. And I'm just glad you reached out to the residents to find out what additional stuff, and I'm glad that we can them. That's really cool. And on that, I'd make a motion.
Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Hammond. All in favor? Oh, that's carried. Thank you, Ken. Moving on to the Canadian Experiences Fund, and I believe you,
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation before Council tonight is that the municipality of Leamington enter into a contribution agreement with the federal government. Sorry, I just lost my resolution. To construct a 3-meter wide, 1.4 off-road path from Mercer Road 12 to Point Pelee National Park, and that administration is authorized to begin negotiations with various landowners for the purchase of required land. Council has made it clear in various discussions up to Road E and then across Pelee Drive and connect with the trails that are currently in Point Pelee National Park. So as noted in the report, we submitted, there's various grant opportunities that are available, and we submitted for this particular project and were awarded $300,000 towards the construction. As noted in the report, we're estimating that the cost to build the trail, including land acquisition, is about $710,000. So the municipality would essentially have to fund the remaining $410,000 estimate within the 2020 budget. Certainly, it's also important, I felt it important in the report to talk about the estimated costs. I mean, we never like to bring projects before council that are interconnected with other phases of the project without trying to capture, the full scope and full project cost of that initiative. And so I wanted council to be aware that in the section that we submitted for between the Sturgeon Creek Bridge and Road 12, that was approved by the CWATS committee. So we are going to hire somebody to look at that section. The county has submitted a petition for drainage through that section. And so we felt it was the perfect opportunity to take a look at both projects because there's an opportunity to address the drainage issues from the road and the private residences along there and potentially incorporate a multi-use path above that drain. Though I wanted council to be clear that that won't be an inexpensive endeavor. That particular project, right now, very early on in the estimate, we can only do things like use the County Road 20 costs where we built 1.5 meters on either side of the road. We know that cost us $800,000 a kilometer, but that particular scope of work included replacing all the curbs as well. So taking that into account and taking into account that essentially that initiative would include enclosing a lot of pipes, right now we're putting a budget estimate of $1.5 to $2 million on that particular stretch, but that particular stretch would be a 60% Leamington, 40% County of Essex share because it is a built-up area, but it's within the county right-of-way, so that's on the CWATS funding model. This particular, the subject section from Road 12 to the park gates is not in the CWATS plan and it's not within the county right-of-way. So this is a Leamington project. If Leamington Council wants to see a dedicated active transportation connection to the park gates, we have to go about this on our own to make this solution happen. And what you see before you is our proposal to get it moving. Now, we certainly recognize as well that this project has its risks, meaning land acquisition is probably the greatest risk because it is a linear piece of infrastructure, so we need to buy property on every single parcel. And then beyond that, there could be some delays for various reasons on moving the section between Sturgeon Creek and Road 12, moving it forward, just from a matter of design and process and then funding and cost sharing. But administration felt that the good news about this particular section is that it could live and provide good benefit as its own entity. People are using Peely Drive currently, obviously, on their bikes and walking and running to get to the park gates. And what this would do, even as a standalone initiative, would be get them off this narrow section of road currently and allow them, even if they had to use the current roadway along Peely Drive, they could at least get off at Road 12 and make it to the park gates. I did want to, by way of explanation, the map, the last page of the report, I wanted to explain to council the land acquisition suggestion. So the trail essentially, and it gets a bit lost in the shading, but you can see a dotted line on the top or the north end of this land acquisition. That's where the trail would actually get built. But our recommendation, and this is what we're if approved by council, we will try to acquire all of the land from the location of the trail to the public right-of-way. The reason being, if we didn't do that, we would be creating these strips of landlocked parcels that really don't have a lot of benefit or wouldn't have any future use. So it would only make sense that we would essentially, even though it would be municipally owned lands and not a road allowance, that it would be publicly held basically from the southern edge of the right-of-way all the way up to the trail. The reason it looks different as we go further to the east, southeast, is that the property, so council will see the large shading area. We have to come across Road D, so we are going to have to build a pedestrian bridge over top of the drain at Road D. And then as we come towards the park, you'll see that changes, so that large shaded area isn't there any longer. And that is because there is currently a parcel a private parcel that is separate from the farmland. So that gap that council sees through the section, further to the southeast, that's not a landlocked parcel. Those parcels exist currently. So there's no need necessarily to acquire those lands because we're not creating a problem or a land use problem or irregular, unusable parcels like we would in the other areas. Final couple points on the report. We are required to spend, if we move forward, we will have to spend the $300,000 federal contribution by December of next year. We're confident, so long as land acquisition moves forward, and we're confident that's moving forward, we're not overly concerned about that. We can't guarantee that the project will be complete by December of next year, depending on how things go. But the good news about this particular funding is that it can be the first $300,000 spent on the project. So essentially, while we may incur some minor design costs, survey costs, and preparatory work, we want to be fairly certain that we're going to be able to acquire all of these parcels before we move right into detailed design of the whole thing, because the one commitment that we have to make to the federal government is that if we expect that we're spending federal monies, the project has to be complete. So if we run into something that we cannot overcome and it jeopardizes the project, any costs that we've incurred to date are Leamington costs. If we build this thing, the first $300,000 can be the federal money. So I just wanted to point that out to council. And Your Worship, I believe those are all the comments I had.
Mr. Neufeld would like to speak too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The width of the amount of land that we're acquiring can look a little deceptive. Is what we have along the side of the road is unused land, non-usable, non-farmable land, as it's a drain and ditch. So that's part of why it looks a little wider. So when we're purchasing at fair market value, that may also have some influence on the price.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. It's very exciting, Rob. It's gone much quicker than I thought. The CWATs as well, I didn't know about that. So that's another good step, even if it takes a teeny bit longer, but at least it's now on the books. It's not just up in the air anymore. So they won't renege on that, the CWATs people. Well, they better not, because there will be a fight. They will have a fight on their hands. I can guarantee you that the deputy mayor and I will fight, will we not? We will. But this is wonderful, wonderful news. It's just, I couldn't be more pleased. First of all, that we got the money for this portion. And I think it's it'll be a really neat experience at this point for people that are biking to go down there. I think that adds another bit of a hook to it. But the fact that we got to see Watts is really good. To find that out in conjunction with this announcement is great.
Your Worship, I want to make sure I'm managing expectations here. What the CWATS committee approved was our functional design study. So basically, it is the first step. So I forgive me. I just want to make sure that no one misinterpreted my comments to think that they've approved the actual construction of it. They've approved us looking at it. Can we fit it? Can we design it? What would the estimated cost be? But you're absolutely right, Your Worship. That's the first step. And if it is feasible and it can be built, then we will be looking to build it. Sorry, the final point that I didn't mention is that one of the benefits of the Peely Drive residents now being in the sanitary servicing area is when we do get to the point of building the drainage infrastructure, they will be block assessed to the municipality. So under previous conditions, they would have been assessed all of those drainage costs, the capital costs, and maintenance costs, and those will come to us now.
Good. But Rob, I looked to County Road 20 and how long it took us to get to where we are today. The fact that they're listening to us, I think we've made huge inroads. So to me, this is wonderful news. With that, I have Councillor Dunn first.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Rob, yeah, the idea of putting this together is really exciting, especially with the amount of biking going on in the point and the tourism towards biking. My curiosity, and I'm glad Mr. Neufeld pointed out, is the ditches, the portion we're buying, because they're unusable. Is there going to be any more cost to us to clean them out or to maintain them, or as opposed to being part of a farmland?
That's a good question, Councillor, through your worship. Yes, so the total land area that's identified in that map is about 6.5 acres from end to end. The section through there is a municipal drain, and so it doesn't matter who owns it. The costs are assessed to the benefiting property owners based on the drainage scheme. If certain parts of it are not part of the scheme, we just want to clean it up. I mean, we would likely do that with own forces, Public Works essentially. So no additional ongoing maintenance costs related to those ditches by actually owning.
I have Councillor Hammond as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm really pleased that Mr. McClure could stay with us tonight so he can help carry this message to those that, that are down in Point Pelee Drive and along that area. They've been waiting for this for a long time. And I think they'll understand or hope. I mean, it doesn't help with their sewer separation, but when they look at we're considering spending $2 million down there, I think it'll only assert the fact that yes, we do care about what happens in that area. So.
Well, I think too the fact that we're recognizing what Point Pelee is to the community, and the fact that the next generation is about experiential tourism, and this will contribute to it. So to me, we're getting it, and I think I'm proud. I'm proud of the fact that staff has worked towards this. I'm proud that all of council's been on board with it. Because a few years ago, this would have been like pulling teeth as well, because it was not a priority. And I'm proud of the fact that we all think alike when it comes to making our community a better place for everybody. And again, being active, that's another. I know I've told you this story before, but back in the 70s when we used to go for a walk, people used to stop and offer us a ride because they thought, why are you walking? And it was you didn't do that, and now you're not with it if you don't walk. Can I add? I walk every day. Anyway, with that, no, it was when Doug and I walked together. Never mind. Anyway, with that, I think I have Councillor Wilkinson as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And Rob, I just want to get confirmation on what a multi-use trail looks like. That'd be like one that runs beside the complex, of course, over to the high school, loose gravel, correct?
Yes, through your worship, that's correct. That's our intentions right now. Typically when we build these, and it's certainly a conversation we can have in the future. Right now, as it was scoped and spec'd for the purposes of submitting the application and for the purposes of tonight, it was our typical multi-use trail, exactly like what runs behind the complex. Even those trails we build to such a specification that if we wanted to hard surface it, we could. The base is there and it's a matter of asphalt. Though the exactly how we design this particular surface, we're going to have some discussion about that. It may look exactly like that, or we may try to improve the surface somewhat given its location. So from a maintenance standard, it lasts a little bit longer without the required maintenance, or less maintenance than typical trails.
But further to that, just to make it clear, the proposed one, the CWATS one, will not be off-road type. It will be the paved shoulder,
That's correct, Your
non-gravel.
Worship.
Okay.
Forgive me. Yes, that's our intention. Yes,
Okay.
is that the functional design study will look at a 3-meter wide, 2-directional, multi-use path along Pelee Drive.
Good, wonderful. So, if they're moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Dunn, all in favor? And that's carried. Great. Pass that on for us, would you please, Rob? So, forgive me for a minute here. I am on to the Essex Power Lines Corporation Service, the easement for the Woodsit development and the Ovis Homes on Anfred.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The municipality has received a request from Essex Power Lines Corporation for a 2.4 meter wide by 70 meter long easement through municipally owned property on Anfred Street. And that's identified in the aerial view on the second page of the report. The purpose of the easement is to allow Essex Power Lines to bury underground high voltage lines to feed the Woodsits development and any future growth in that vicinity. It's a proposed underground high voltage line. It would be centered within the easement. No infrastructure is located above grade within the easement lands. By approving the easement, it's avoiding excavation of the front yards in the existing area of Anfred. There's no financial impact in connection with the granting of the easement, given the municipality's relationship with Essex Power Lines and the benefit of granting easements to assist in the efficient development. Historically, the municipality has not charged a fee for these easements, but the cost of preparation and registration would be borne by Essex Power Lines. The recommendation is that council authorize the granting of the easement over Part 1 on reference plan 27943 to Essex Power Lines for the purpose of installing, maintaining, replacing, and altering, cleaning, repairing, and providing and operating an electrical distribution system and the associated equipment, and that the Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute the documents required to effect the transfer of the easement lands.
Thank you, Ruth. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ruth, what is the distance of that lot line from that house? Or is it? It looks like it's very close to that house. Or is there must be sufficient room there, I'm guessing, if they're going to go in. Are they excavating with excavators, or is it going to be a narrow trench? Or
are you looking at 23 Anfred?
Yep.
I understand it would likely be a trench, a direct bore.
A direct bore or a trench?
A direct bore.
Direct bore? Okay, that's good. Perfect.
Anyone else? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to the fee schedule, the 2020 fee schedule. And that is Laura.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I figured Ben would be better off at home tonight, knowing the length of our meeting. We'll make this quick. Annual administration reviews the municipal fees that are presented to council for consideration. These fees are established to apply a user pay or fee-for-service approach to services that benefit a particular group or individual. These fees supplement taxation revenues and therefore reduce the taxation burden for municipal services that one benefits or has the opportunity to enjoy. For fees in the 2019 budget, that totaled about 10% of our general tax-funded operating costs, just for consideration, about $4 million. Administration has considered market rate comparisons, service delivery standards, and cost increases to propose these new rates. I will advise council that the comment in the schedule, the proposed schedules that are deemed market adjustments really reflect an increase of operational costs. So they vary between 2 and 4%. So we couldn't put a straight 2% across it because that was not factual. But of course, that's our operating costs are continuing to increase, and some of our rates have not increased in some time. So those are market adjustments. So the 2020 fee schedule is presented for you in preparations of our 2020 budgets. So fees established by this bylaw are charged accordingly and are not waived, of course, until council directs. So the report provides schedules A through N for council's consideration. And on page 2 of Ben's report, many of the changes are highlighted. Just one in particular that I'd like to go over, the building service fees. In this report and under this bylaw, it's currently recommended to be the same. It's been identified that the fees are well below the average market comparators, as the fees have not been adjusted since 2012 for building. So administration is seeking council's direction to move forward with the public process to recommend increases and changes to the various fees as outlined in the final Schedule E marked proposed. So once the legislative process is followed, we will bring these fees back to council for final approval. So all fees in this report have been reviewed and recommended by the managers and directors of each of the responsible departments. So we will all participate in providing further detail if council has any specific questions. So at this time, it is recommended that the draft 2020 fee schedule be approved, that council direct administration to move forward with the legislative process for the building fees on Schedule E as proposed, and administration be directed to forward bylaw 55-19 to provide for a tariff of fees to be charged in 2020 by the municipality of Leamington. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a couple questions, if I may, first? The creation of the new lot and the lot addition having gone up $200 as well as the easement. So those are the ones that you're saying require that much staff time, or you're comparing it to other municipalities for it to go up $200? Well, I have more questions for you, so
Yeah, sorry.
keep that mic on.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I think that's just, is not new fees, it's a combination of fees, I think. 3 new fees being recommended. So site plan exemption is a new fee. So
That's what I was going to ask you about, because of the amount that you get asked to do.
So the director's exemption is a process, I guess, we've been using more now
Yes.
than later.
I'm aware of that,
but,
yeah.
but we still have to process that. So
Right.
we don't have a fee per se for that. The historical land use and environmental request is something that we've seen that we've been getting more and more requests, and it's more for environmental compliance. It's not. We generally get compliance letters for municipal compliance, but this is somebody looking for a historical context on a property and probably looking for environmental reasons, which we only provide what the uses were previous to that. And then the last one is the telecommunication letter for concurrence, which I think council has dealt with some of those there, which we have no charge for, but we've started we want to implement a fee for.
Right. Do we notify the people ahead of time? We don't just shock them with it? I mean, even the site plan, there's an expectation, right?
Yeah. We didn't go through a public, Laura mentioned the building permit fees, which we were recommending to council because they had to look at possibly increasing, but we do have to go through a public consultation period for that. So all we're asking for council tonight is not necessarily to increase those fees, albeit we feel they may need to be increased. We have to go through a process to do that. So all we're asking council to do tonight is to give us permission to go through that process.
Okay, and then one more. So the minor hockey fee, I know there was some discussion with minor hockey to lower it, to make it a little more attainable for some people. And I know we're not out of the, shall we say, ballpark for what other ballpark, not a good choice, I guess, outside the arena, for what other centers are charging. And further to that, I had also had someone at one of my coffee chats approach me and complain, if you will, about our prices for the shirts, saying that they were rather expensive. But you do your homework, and staff do their homework in regards to what other entities are charging. So we're not out of the, again, ballpark, but we're not out of the normal scope of charges or fees, are we?
No, through your worship. I think if anything, we're probably on the lower end, especially on ice fees. I do have the table somewhere here, but we're on the low end on what we charge for ice rentals. Council can always lower it at their discretion. We're going to continue to come to council. I think you'll see a 1% or 2% increase every year for a lot of our fees, and that's just to reflect inflationary costs. Pretty much all the fees that we have here now before council are just incremental increases to reflect our own costs. And when we say costs, it's just the normal 2% in labor per year or less, depending on how that goes. It's not saying that we're trying to get back any kind of losses or anything. It's just adding that normal incremental amount to our fees. I mean, with regard to ICE, council can always lower. We wouldn't recommend it given where we're positioned right now. You know, our ICE is still fairly low, even at our prime time rates are still, I won't say low. There, you might find one or two lower, but we're on the lower end within the county.
Well, and I think we've been in the game long enough to know what we need to charge. If some of the newer centers are charging less, they'll find out that if they don't want a big black hole, they need to up their prices.
Yeah. And one thing that we did do, we recognized that, you know, with regard to the complex, where you mentioned the fees in the complex, sometimes you can't compare everything the same because not everybody has a membership rate like we have. We have that yearly membership that allows you to do all programming, and some other recreation facilities you just pay per activity that you're in. Ours gives you access to all activities and stuff. So not everybody has that rate, but then on the individual rates that others have, we find we're at the lower end. I won't even say middle. Sometimes we're lower.
Well, and we offer the options, right? The 3-month, the 6-month, and so on that perhaps the others don't do. So I feel like we're in a good spot.
So one thing that we put in here that we recognized is that we have a 3-month, 6-month seniors rate. We noticed that we don't have a flex pass rate for seniors. We have a couples rate for seniors, and we have those other 3, but we don't have a flex pass rate for seniors. So we added that here, you know, to be fair to seniors. So, yeah, I think, I mean, I'm looking at all of our the increases that we proposed, because a lot of my department has a bulk of the fees, I guess. The only direction that we gave was to just every year continuously come to council with those inflationary costs and not anything else. We've already looked at the market and we should be where we are. I will say in the building permit fees, we're on the low end, looking to go to the middle, but recognizing that everybody else is going to increase again this year. So, but again, that's the public consultation process will determine whether council can make that decision at a later date. Yeah.
Good. I just wanted to ask, Councillor Jacobs, were you asked to inquire about boating fees? Did a resident ask you to ask about boating fees, or no? Is that no? Yes. Something for, I don't know, sewage pump out or something?
No, I think Mr. Hammond has a comment regarding, are you talking about marina fees? Is that where you're at?
Yes, sewage pump out or something like that. Someone had approached me, said they had talked to you, and I always refer them back to the original councillor that they asked. So I wanted to make sure that you got that.
I have not received anything, Madam Mayor.
All right, then we'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
Worthy Mayor, thanks. I guess, I know we've talked before about it, but I'm going to probably direct this to Peter. We talked about the transit bus advertising. Are we still going to continue to do that 60 and 115? I think it's on page 14 or something. I don't know. Yeah, page 14 of the report. Are we going to promote what we have in our town now? I mean, is it a big money maker? Sorry, I'm going to defer to Rob.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes, if I may, through your worship. As council is aware, we're looking to acquire two new transit buses. If the funding is ever approved by the province, we've been waiting, and they've very clearly told us although they announced it was approved, but that was just the provincial government saying they approved to send it up to the federal government. So want the council be aware that actually wasn't approved yet. But it is our intention to buy 2 new buses. And if we do, we will be looking at some sort of advertising scheme, but it'll be very different than the old school panels that we currently see bolted to the side of our existing transit buses. We left that in there because there are still a few in there, though we have been trying to use them for municipal purposes, though it was quite telling why we're not getting a huge uptake from private businesses using it because, we struggle to find practicality in it because our events we're advertising are typically timely, and so you have these things made and you put them up and then you throw them away in a few weeks. So I guess my long answer, Your Worship, is that we're going to leave it in there. We are still collecting, but that likely won't be part of the future of how we advertise on our buses.
Anyone else? Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Rob, you just mentioned the advertising. Are you thinking maybe going digital? Using it for our own purposes so that way we don't have to make signs and stuff? And I don't know, sorry. You just created a squirrel moment.
That's okay. Through Your Worship, that's part of it. For us, we have the game plan. We're waiting to hear back on when and if that funding gets approved for the buses. As soon as that happens, we have Metrolinx and Alexander Dennis, the manufacturers of the bus, ready to go. We have our contacts lined up. So as soon as we get approval, we're going to be meeting with them, and we'll be talking basically about all of the options and opportunities that we have on these transit buses, including electronic advertising, various cool features that we're thinking would work well in a transit system the size of ours. So yes, we will be considering that.
Councillor Hammond?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to refer to page 9, which are the marina fees. 2 years ago I asked and I'm looking specifically at the hydro usage. 2 years ago I asked if it was possible to separate the docks from the buildings that were down there to give us a better idea what the hydro usage was. And then last year I asked if we could put some temporary meters on the docks to give us a better idea, to try to reflect the actual usage of what's happening. So when I saw the report come out and I see that we're still charging so much per year, I did place a call to Terry Simons, and Terry said that they'd gotten some prices on installing some meters, and it was expensive. He didn't indicate as to how much. It's my belief, and I'm far from an expert, to think that meters may be expensive, but I think they'll better reflect what the actual hydro usage is on some of those, especially those larger boats down there. So with the approval of my fellow councillors, I'd like to have an assurance that we are going to put meters at least on a number of those docks to give us some kind of a reflection of what actually hydro is being used.
Paul?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I apologize for not getting it in, but the technology that we thought could go there couldn't, and that was much cheaper than the technology I think Terry is talking about. In saying that, I'm hearing the reverse again, and that there may be something else that we can put on it. So I hear you. I want it on as well. I apologize for not getting it on, but it's one of those things that you get so far into the year, then it's almost too late to do it. But we do want to get them on the docks, and I guess hindsight being what it is, my understanding that, probably we ought to have considered it for the new docks when we got them. I don't know if the incremental costs at that time, it would have upped the project a bit, but I don't know if those incremental costs would have made much of a difference. So I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't think of it at that time, but I think we should be able to do it. I believe Essex Power or somebody should be able to tell us how to do that.
Okay, Paul, fair enough. Thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
So I found this email that I got today, and one of those was about the hydro costs, and the other was about if someone sells their boat mid-season, that the next person be allowed to keep the slip. We don't allow that. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. No, we don't. I can't remember what the rationale was for that.
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you on that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and then is there a cancellation fee, a new cancellation fee on this that I'm not seeing in regards to the marina? For $100, yes. And what's that for, if you don't mind?
Through you, Mayor McDonald, it is a new fee for this schedule. However, it was always part of the agreement that the marina owners signed. So this is another way that we've really brought our fees bylaw into compliance to make you aware of what we're charging.
Okay, great. All right, that's good for me. Then I've answered the questions of the resident. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the fees here, for an example, it says a dock for about $800 or 26 or longer, 51. Is that price per foot for the unit for dockage? Is that what you're basing it on? $51?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. That's per foot.
And then if a boat exceeds the slip size, it's $53. That's sort of a difference. I don't understand that. If you have a 42-foot boat and a 40-foot dock, all of a sudden you're charging $2 more a foot for the extra 2 feet, but you're still paying by the foot. I don't follow that rationale.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can honestly, it's not a fee we were changing, so I can't even tell you how it was applied in the past. It's not a new fee.
It's always been that way?
Well, from my experience, Ben, if you pay so much per foot for dockage, and if you have a 40-foot dock, you have a 35-foot boat, you're still paying for the 40-foot dock. But here it's saying that if you go over, what is it? Whatever the dock is, if you're longer than the dock, you're paying $53 a foot. So I don't really follow that. But maybe it's just something you can look at.
But it's only being increased incrementally, right? So it's always been that from the looks of the chart?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking to Laura, who has more boating experience than I
Oh,
have.
yes.
Sometimes it's when somebody who probably has a larger boat requests to be in a specific dock, to be next to people that they know, but wouldn't necessarily always be placed in that dock.
Oh, okay. Counselor? Well, if it is what it is.
I do agree with Councillor Hammond on the hydro charge. And I think that the increase, even at $5, is extremely minimal, because some of those larger vessels have multiple air conditioning units on them, and they're running 24/7 in some cases. And I think we need to take a look at that, because that is, I believe, a drain on our costs.
Mr. Neufeld.
In the interest of time, I just want to remind council that what we want to do is get permission to take this to the public, and then we'll come back and there will be more opportunities for discussion. Is that not what? Oh, just the building part, sorry. Proceed.
Was that a motion to adjourn?
If this keeps up, the deputy mayor's going to order pizza.
And with that, moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. One more, but I don't think this is going to be quick. Moving on to the proactive bylaw enforcement. What did you say? Sorry? You moved? Proactive bylaw enforcement, Ms. Orton.
Just for council's consideration, there is no urgency to hear this particular report. If there is a request for deferral, there's nothing that turns on any decision in connection with this. However, I'm not available at the next council meeting. It would need to go to a November council meeting.
I think that would be fine, because I do think this will involve more conversation and maybe not debate, but at least conversation. So I would need a motion then that we would defer this to the first meeting in November.
I believe that would work for me. If not.
Well, we
can
need you there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have anything scheduled that would take me out of
Okay.
town.
Okay, so we'll motion to defer this proactive bylaw enforcement in the Uptown Phase 2 till the first council meeting in November. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. So, where are we now? Other matters for approval, there are none, so we'll move on to consideration of bylaws. Ms. Orton.
Bylaw 5319, being a bylaw to provide for a new access culvert over the Saras Drain in the municipality of Leamington in the county of Essex, be read a first and second time. Bylaw 5419, being a bylaw to impose a special charge to raise part of the cost of the Peely-Bevel sanitary sewer collection project pursuant to subsection 5.1 of Ontario Regulation 586/06, made under the Municipal Act 2001, and that bylaw contains, or will contain, the interest rate and term provisions as council has directed. It will also come into force upon the certification of the roll by the treasurer, which will be completed now that the committee has heard all of the objections. Bylaw 5519, being a bylaw to impose fees and charges by the Corporation of the Municipality of Leamington. Bylaw 5619, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held October 8th, 2019. And those three bylaws be read for a first, second, and third and final time.
Thank you, Ruth. Council? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Jacobs. All in favor? And that's carried. So we'll move on to notices of motion. There are none. Open session. I just wanted to say, if I may, I wanted to bring you the AMO report because we had a board meeting 2 weeks ago. I will wait. I think there's things you need to know, but AMO is in the process of doing things that are on our municipality's radar. I'm talking cannabis, a few other things. And again, it reiterates the fact that we have somebody from the municipality on that board, I think is starting to pay off, and that's good. So I will tell you that next time. So anyone else? Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick comment on the 10-foot sidewalks that we had a debate about. And it's not even completed yet. However, I was provided with a picture today of a lady driving down there with a car. How she got on, no idea. But someone took a picture, showed it to me today of her driving down that. So how are you going to control that, Rob?
Rob?
Your Worship, my understanding is that the car turned on to Woodside Drive and got on the sidewalk that way, based on, how things look right now. We're aware of that as well. The way that the curbs are being designed, it presents that opportunity, but we're going to have a bollard on that location because, well, it's the same reason we had to put all these planters here on the trail, because people were driving over the mountable curb and driving up beside the municipal building as well. So we are aware of it, and we will have a physical obstacle in place to make sure that no one else makes that mistake.
I just had to bring that forward because there was some debate as cars driving down there, and when I saw that picture today, I couldn't believe it. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Really, Mayor, thanks. I'm not sure about Councillor Hammond, but when some of us leave the arena at night, it's really dark in the parking lot. I didn't know if there's any thing in the budget or anything, or new lighting or different lighting to light it up. It's a scary place at night when it's dark, and it's going to get dark sooner. So.
Mayor?
Sorry, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. To that point, Deputy Mayor, I had asked, again, a year or two ago about trying to get a light On the, it would be the northeast side of the building. You know, the entrance, the rear entrance? It is really dark there, trying to get in and or out, that whole portion. So maybe you can take a look at that too as well. And I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not.
That's the parking lot.
Oh, the parking lot itself.
Look at it.
There used to be, before they did a lot of construction down in Church Street, there used to be a street light that helped light that up, and it's been moved or something changed there. So that entrance coming in and out of the rear entrance of the arena is really difficult at night. It's dark.
Through you, Mayor, I think we were talking about switching over to LED. I don't know if that's happened yet. So the lighting is on our radar. I don't know. I don't know when, but I know lighting was talked about there. Councillor Hammond, were you talking about lighting from the building itself, off the building, or a street light?
Yes, if we could put a light on the building itself,
Okay.
you know, where we have the dominoes thing there,
Yeah.
I think it would help. Any form of lighting there will really help if we can put one up.
Okay.
And if there's nothing else then, sorry, there is statement of members non-debatable. Nothing, motion to adjourn. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Hammond, all in favor? That's carried. Oh, I want to just say thank you to you, Deputy Mayor. You did a good job tonight. Thank you.